Hi, I'm Nina Gigele and this is Skiers Mindset Talk. I'm here to interview and talk with athletes, pros, mental coaches, entrepreneurs, and many more who relate to skiing. Together, we want to improve our mindset in skiing and also in business life. Jawollo! Back to Skiers Mindset, and this time in English. I'm so happy to meet Greg Louie. I haven't met him personally unless today. We know each other from social media, and I'm super stoked because I love his work and his passion about skiing. And I thought, we have to talk together. Hi, Greg.
Hey Nina, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you just asking me to come on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm really appreciating that you have time actually because yeah, what's the time? You're in Seattle now, right?
Yeah, it's actually 10:30 in the morning, so plenty of time. I just kind of got my day started, so I love just like talking skiing all the time, and if I can do it by helping other people, it's great.
Amazing. That sounds fun. Yeah, so we're here currently facing a thunderstorm. It's in the evening in Austria, but I'm sure we're gonna have a great time. Why I actually reached out to you is because you are a physiotherapist and you work a lot with injuries, and what I can see from social media, you're a passionate skier. How come? Like, what's the connection there?
Man, yeah, I would say my story is I grew up skiing starting at the age of 5. I learned in my backyard. I used to go to my elementary school, and my dad bought a pair of skis just from secondhand store and put them on my feet, and we would slide down the hill, walk back up, and ever since then, I've really been just hooked on just the freedom and just like the liberty that skiing brings. In high school, I had an opportunity to instruct elementary school kids, and that's really when I had an opportunity to go to the mountain a lot because I was going there for instruction from other people to help me improve my skiing, so that way I could help the kids. And from there, it just kind of took off. When I was applying for university, there was two universities that I wanted to go to. The one university was the one my parents had gone to, and my grandparents actually went there as well. So a little bit of legacy. And then the second one was actually Montana State. And if you live in the United States, you know that's in Bozeman, Montana. And Big Sky, which is one of the biggest mountains. I think it's terrain wise, it's the second biggest, I believe, in North America, is right in its backyard. Um, Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, I got into University of Washington, so I didn't end up going to Bozeman. Um, but I feel like if I would have gone there, I don't know if I would have finished school because I think I would have just been skiing all winter long. So I think it worked out. And then how I got into doing what I do today, well, I've just because I've always loved skiing. Once I went to physical therapy school and graduated, I really wanted to like work with the sports population. What I ended up finding out is when I would go to the mountain with my friends, they would end up getting injured, and they would always ask me questions about like, "Hey, Greg, how do I fix this, or what do I do for this?" And over time, I was like, "Man, there's a lot of people asking me about skiing and rehab." And there's not really a lot of resources out there to help people. So I decided to kind of launch into this business of going online and helping not only my friends, but other people just answer their questions about skiing and rehab. And that's what I do full time today.
That's amazing. And can you say anything about like what are the biggest injuries you face, especially you're based mainly in the US, right? So I'm curious about the biggest or yeah, those injuries
Yeah.
people have.
So out of all the skiing injuries, ACL injuries are going to be the number one. If you've been skiing for long enough, you know someone who has torn their ACL, and it's a very extensive rehab process. There are a lot more protocols that are coming out to help accelerate that. But like I said, if you've been skiing long enough, the ACL is the number one. Actually, the knee in general is going to be the number one area of injury. So if it's not the ACL, the I would say the number two thing that usually kicks people off the mountain that prevents them from being able to ski is like knee arthritis. Where basically the cartilage or the tissue that lines the bone wears down, and then you get that bone on bone sensation. When you get that bone on bone sensation, it can be really, really painful. And eventually, that pain leads people to not be able to ski and then maybe get a knee replacement. And then once they get the knee replacement, they can ski. But there are definitely things that you can do to prevent them. But knee injuries by far are the number one injury that prevents skiers from continuing to be able to ski.
and mainly they're like just falling off or getting hurt on piste or off piste?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the cartilage, that is then generally going to be more of like a wear and tear over time from not taking care of the body. And when I say that, it's because the cartilage will actually respond to stimulus to get stronger. So if a skier goes and skis, but they don't do anything in the off season, well, that cartilage isn't going to stay strong through the off season, so it's going to get weak. And then when you try and go ski again, well, that's a big load on and stress on the cartilage, and then it's going to wear down. So if it were a fact of using the cartilage makes it wear down, well, then all marathon runners or ultra marathon runners, you would expect them to all have knee replacements by the time that they're 50, and that's not true. Over time, those marathon runners build the tissue tolerance to be able to run for those long durations, and it's no different for skiers. So if you want to be able to ski for a long duration, making sure that you're training that cartilage to be strong for a long duration is ideal. Um, for ACL and like say tibial plateau, which is like a fracture or breaking of the shin bone, kind of like
Okay.
on the top part of the shin bone, those ones are more from traumatic injuries. For most skiers that don't ski race, and I'm assuming probably most of your listeners are probably just recreational skiers, there's like three main ways that the ACL is torn, and it's torn from when someone loses their balance and tries to save a fall, or when they lose their balance and they actually fall. So the first one is they lose their balance, they get in the back seat, and the inside edge will catch. And what will happen is because that inside edge catches the snow, the ski acts as a long wrench and basically twist the knee in an outwards motion, and that causes the knee to go. The other one is where someone loses balance and they kind of get into that similar position, but instead of the ski getting pushed outwards, what'll happen is they'll try and correct that ski by putting their weight over it, and by doing it, the other ski in turn will rapidly turn inwards, and that rapid motion does the same thing. You get that wrenching motion, and then you end up tearing the ACL that way. And then the last way the ACL is torn, which is less common, is like say someone goes over a jump and they land on a flat or on an uphill on the tails of their skis, and what'll happen is it'll hyperextend or make the knee suddenly go straight, and it'll basically just snap the ACL right off. So you don't really tear your ACL from skiing, but it's more so from losing your balance and then catching an edge or losing your balance and falling.
Interesting. Regarding the bones, Sheen, because I broke my lower leg, um, which when I actually had my injury, I felt like it's more common to have like break your lower leg, right? And now I think, but now I'm not sure if it's still the same. It feels like it's slightly changing the type of injuries. At our time, it's been, especially for ski races, lots of issues and yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think amongst ski racers, just because you're going just at such a high rate of speed, the statistics between like bone fractures and ACLs, I would say they're more similar. Generally, the ACL, actually, you would think it would happen at a high rate of speed. Generally, that happens at a low rate of speed because the amount of force isn't enough for someone to pop out of the binding. And when that happens, that's when the ski is allowed to torque the knee. So for ski racing, when you're going at a very high rate of velocity and you take a fall, well, now you're getting thrown down into the snow, kind of you get thrown into a washing machine. And however, basically you land and come to a stop, there can be a ton of force that goes through the translatory way of the shin bone. Um, it can rotate the shin bone or can even compress that shin bone. So there's so much force that can go through there that yeah, fractures of the shin bone itself or the plateau of the shin bone are quite common amongst ski racers.
you work with ski racers or mainly like recreational skiers?
Yeah, so right now, the majority of my clients, actually all of my clients right now, are recreational skiers that just
Hmm.
really love to ski. However, I do have experience working with the US ski team. So I
Mm,
volunteer with the US
amazing.
ski team. And if they ever need help on a rotation or anything like that, say they're competing overseas or they're competing domestically and they just need more physiotherapists to help with the team, I'll go help with them. It's a little bit different though working with the ski team because they have a permanent physical therapist that works with them. So you're not working with the people that really have like the long-term injuries. That's going to be more of the permanent staff that works with them. That's what I do with my recreational skiers. When I'm working with the team, it's more triaging, like if they have any aches, pains, or if they do get injured on the hill, I would be one of the people that responds to make sure that they're well taken care of and it's getting reported back to the ski committee, and they're going through the right steps to make sure that like the American side of the doctors are taking care of them. But mostly it's like, hey, if your knee is sore, your back is sore from this race, like maybe you took a crash. Like, how can we make sure you're in the best shape possible going into a training day or going into a race day so you can perform at your maximum? That's what I would do if I'm working with the ski team.
That's great. Yeah, and um, I also see it's difficult, right? If you're just popping in for like helping out, it's difficult to get to understand them well. You know, to get to understand the athletes, the skier very well. What's the average time you work with a skier when he has been injured?
Man, that is a tough question, Nina, because it really depends on the type of injury.
Hmm.
Um, and what the level of the skier they're trying to get to. I would say most skiers that I see in my one-on-one coaching, they are someone who is intermediate to an advanced level skier. I don't really see any beginner skiers because I don't really teach people how to ski. I teach people how to get back to the ski hill, assuming that you already know how to ski. Now, there's certain things that we can like correct once you're back on the ski hill, or certain things that we look at. Um, but generally, like, yeah, if I'm working with someone, um, I will see them after they've gone through traditional physical therapy care because in the American healthcare system, they have to go through their insurance generally first before I can work with them. Or if they want to like kind of collaborate with me as they're going through that process, I have an ability to do that too. But one of the requirements for me to be able to work with them is they have to be discharged from physical therapy or seeing a physical therapist as I work with them at the same time. That's just how insurance and like the legal rules work with me working with people. But once they're past there, that can be a point where it's like, hey, I've tried to leave therapy and work out on my own, and I'm not having the success that I wanted to. And sometimes that could be a 3 month or a 6 month window before the ski season. And then I will either return them to snow, or another option is I will actually help progress them onto snow. So it really depends on what the client wants or what they feel like they need. But generally, I work with people anywhere between 3 to 6 months.
Amazing, great. And can you like say any like is it more women, more men, more people plus 50, plus 40, 30, young kids? What's the main target?
Yeah. I would say the split between men and women is very even. And I think just because you look at men and women that love to ski and it's quite even. And then as far as age goes, I'll see people generally from probably like mid to late 30s all the way up to 60s. I would like to see people that are a little bit older than 60, but I think maybe how I've marketed it, I don't know if people that are in their 70s and 80s are on Instagram. So I think maybe that's just a marketing flaw. But those are the people who are getting the knee replacements and that need the help. And I probably just need to do a little bit more word of mouth to get my name out to help those people.
Mm, interesting. And I mean, you also show a lot of ski videos on Instagram, but mainly you're working with your audience off-piste, like on online, but like focusing on their workouts, physical strength, right? Um, why is it like all videos you make by yourself, or how? Why do you show them the skiing type of
Yeah,
way?
so what my training philosophy is very interesting in that when I am preparing a skier to return back to skiing, I think your training should replicate what you do on the ski hill. Not all of it needs to, but some of it definitely should to be very sports specific. So what
Mm.
I try to do as part of my marketing is show maybe these are exercises that you're currently doing, but these are the little shifts that you can make in your exercises to make them more ski specific.
Mm.
When we're trying to train for skiing in particular, if you think about just downhill skiing, you're taking a chairlift to the very top or a gondola, and then you're skiing downhill. That means your body is controlling the descent the whole way, and you're not propelling yourself forward or propelling yourself up the mountain. If we think about a motion like running, running is very much you're starting from zero and then you're propelling yourself forward to accelerate. Whereas when you're at the top of the mountain and skiing down, the acceleration comes from gravity and you're trying to decelerate actually the whole time. So this type of training would be like if someone is pulling a rubber band and you're trying to slow yourself down so that way you don't trip and fall over your feet. That's basically the type of training that we would want to bias as we are preparing to return towards snow. So I try and do little like mindset shifts as far as, okay, like how do we think about the way we ski and how can we structure our training around the way we ski so that way when you get there, you're skiing is benefited by the training that you've done.
Hmm, interesting. Yeah, totally agree. Back in the days, or it's slightly very much like centered and focused on standard classic exercises. And I also prefer the skiing focus on movement type of workouts. I agree. What are the biggest learnings for you when you started doing that and focus more on skiing specific exercises?
Yeah, I would say the biggest takeaways and maybe things that I see are just in general, I think a lot of training programs, especially you look at like there's a huge craze around CrossFit and just like competition of like high intensity interval training. And a lot of those programs train in the sagittal plane, which is the front and back plane. That's great because it's going to get your heart rate up. It's going to make your legs really strong, but it's also only going to prepare you to move in that one plane of movement. If we think about skiing, you have to go from side to side as you're putting your skis on edge. But then there's also a rotary component or a translatory component
Yeah.
of rotating the skis. So when I'm building a program, I'm emphasizing doing all three planes of those movement in addition to thinking about, okay, what are the forces of skiing, like we talked about earlier, that deceleration, controlling that down. And then you also have to take in consideration, okay, the duration in which a ski run lasts can, depending on if you're a ski racer or if you're a recreational skier, can go from like 1 to 2 minutes up to 20 minutes, right? So if you're not training in a volume where you've been doing the activity for 20 minutes and your legs aren't used to that on dry land, well, then how would you expect your body to be able to do that when you get to snow? So there's a lot of factors that go into it. It can be confusing, but because I've done it for so long, it seems like quite simplistic when you get down to like the foundation of what the individual struggles with and then what you can give them to help them get to the next step.
Yeah, I agree actually, and I feel there's a lot of lack or like people are struggling, especially with the rotation, especially when they're in the booth, right? As it's so stiff, it feels for them. They totally forget about moving and rotating their joints, starting from the lowest to the hip and up and above. I mean, sure, you have some technical aspects, but I feel, or I actually work a lot in kind of get understanding the joints and to use the rotation of the jumping angle when moving with the knee. And I feel, we grow up, or I grew up in an area where we did a lot of like spending outdoors, being up in the mountains, a lot of hilly, steep places where you could had to just like stay sidewards and then run down the mountain where you automatically de-accelerated this because you had to stop, otherwise it would have been falling off, right? But I feel due to um, yeah, nowadays you do classic movements, you run, you cycle, but no playground in between anymore, right? And that's where maybe it's also lacking, and that's where also those issues or those injuries are coming more from, right?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. I think like you made a good point. Like running, especially like if you're just running on like the road or if you're road cycling, those lack those tri-dimensional movements. I can make an argue more for like if you're trail running, because now you're trying to like dodge boulders and you may have to like turn corners
Exactly.
and whatnot. Or if you're like mountain biking where you're going across berms, that can be very similar. But I still think in a sense there is benefit to dryland training in addition to those activities as well.
Definitely. I mean, it's essential. We played a lot in coordination stuff, you know. We did a lot of fun stuff, playing balls, balancing and stuff to get used to this. But it's actually it's like it's a workout. It's like a training. You really have to focus exactly on that, right? So I feel and also like you said, like a lot of people are focusing on CrossFit and these fast moving, fast paced um do you think that it just is it like the trend which makes it that many people are just focusing on high intensity rather than really doing cardio, slow mo? Like that's how I grew up, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. And I think it has to do a lot with the specificity. Specificity meaning how do you design a program around the activity that you're trying to do, right? So the mistake actually that I used to make, like when I was in university, and this is before a physical therapy school, everyone that comes out of secondary school is, I'm going to go to the weight room and just put on a ton of muscle because I want to look big and strong, right? Well, it's like I would do that, but then I would get to the ski hill and I would actually like get gassed out or I would fatigue out really quickly because I wasn't training in the right way to make my muscles used to skiing. And my friend that was like way skinnier than me, way smaller, he would just go down the mountain and I was like, "Oh, it's probably because he's lighter." But what I didn't realize is my friend that was lighter, it's like, oh, he would be doing like biking and running and kind of stressing the legs in a way that replicate more of the motions of skiing, and that's why he would perform better. But what I also found, or what I know now, is you don't only want to do that because you do need muscle for the instances where, if say you are a ski racer and you're trying to go around a gate, you need muscle to be able to power around the gate. Like if you're more muscular, you can take a more aggressive line, versus if you're not, then you have to basically straight line down and you can't cut around the gates as fast. So there's benefits to both, and dialing your training based on what type of skiing you're doing is my recommendation.
And what would you say, let's say for an on-piste skier, what type of workout would you suggest such a guy or person rather than somebody who's more off-piste or alpine,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
racing?
So I think like yeah, if you're on piste and you're really going around like gates or trying to like really work on increasing your edge angles, that's going to be a lot of like plyometrics jumping side to side, especially if you're on shorter skis and trying to make shorter turns. So your ability to go side to side. You can think about the same thing as like if you are skiing like in the trees, for example, and you're trying to weave through the trees, and maybe even for moguls as well, as you're going down the moguls and absorbing the bumps, you want to be able to absorb the bumps and move your feet quickly from side to side, or at least pivot from side to side pretty quickly. So that rapid change in direction would be more critical for someone that is skiing on piste, whereas maybe off piste, you really need to work on your balance because you don't know what the quality of the snow looks like underneath that powder, or even if it's chunky snow. Maybe like you're on a part where it's like really fresh powder, really light, but then the sun exposes one area and then it becomes really heavy, and then you start to get thrown forward and back. So for there, you need to be really, really light and agile on your feet and used to responding really quickly. And for a lot of people, when they get in those situations, that's when they start to lean back because they get nervous, or that's their strategy so their tips don't sink down. But working on controlling your balance and just finding that center of balance point, because it has to be so much more fine tuned when you're in snow like that, is really essential for someone that is maybe more of an off-piste skier.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And it's fun. It's fun to hear it also because yeah, I am totally agreeing on that. And it's also like a different type of cardio. Because when you're off-piste and or ski touring, you are more into cardio than skiing on piste and doing more up and ski racing and being more short because your runs are shorter,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Mm. And I mean, you're a skier and you're based in the US. You're probably on all mountain skis, right? Or are you on the race?
Generally, yeah. So more recently, I've switched, but generally, most people that live, especially on the West Coast, on the East Coast, they because they have more ice days, they may have narrower skis. Generally, in the West Coast, you don't want anything below a 95 waist width because we just get that volume of snow. I think been this big fad of fat ski syndrome, and people are realizing, we actually don't need that fat of skis to float on snow. And honestly, I found the same thing. Like I've had just as fun of a day on my 100 millimeters as I've had on my 120 millimeters. And it's like, yeah, do the 120 millimeters float way better on snow? Yes, absolutely. But once things get tracked out, do I really want to ski all the way back to the car to switch out skis and go through this hassle? Or do I just want to stay on the mountain and enjoy it with my friends? I would much rather stay on the mountain and enjoy it with my friends. And yeah, maybe I don't get as much enjoyment out of the one or two fresh powder runs on the wider skis, but overall, my skiing experience for the whole day is going to be better when I go narrower. So, yeah, generally I've skied all mountain, but more recently, especially after like getting and following more of this ski racing community, because that's who I worked with Team USA. I've really been fascinated on actually working on my short turn and shortening the length of my skis, getting a little more aggressive side cut so I can actually like work on pivoting and turning it quicker. Prior to doing any of this, I thought like, oh, if I can ski down the mountain and I can hard charge as fast as possible, that's gonna make me or define me as the best skier or like a good skier. Whereas I've progressed, I found that actually like that's not true. Like anyone, or I shouldn't say anyone, but it's very easy to go really fast and just not be able to turn. Whereas when you get into something really technical, like say you're in a really tight trees or in a mobile field. I was skiing with someone that I met last year down in Aspen, and if you just look at him, he's like a snake going down the mountain. And man, on the big wide open bowls, like no problem. I was able to keep up, but we get into these tight trees and he's just weaving down and I was like trying to muscle through each turn and I just couldn't do it. And I realized, man, there's still so much room for me to work on my technique, my edging, my rotary, my angulation just to control the skis under me.
Great to hear. It motivates me to show you some tips on short turns.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take all the tips I can. I feel like skiing, rehab, anything, there's always room for improvement. And like whenever you settle, honestly, I was even talking to Bodie Miller on my podcast. And, Bodie is like arguably one of the best skiers. I mean, he won gold several times. So you can say he's the best skier. But even him, every time he goes, he's always like, there's always something I can be doing to improve. So yeah,
All the
I mean,
time. I
we're
totally
talking
agree.
ski mindset. Like, yeah, never settle. There's always things you can improve. If you think you're the best at something, try and do it with a different ski setup and see if you're still good at it with a different ski setup. I think you see a lot of people out there like, oh, I need these fat skis to ski powder. Like, a lot of people that ski race will go out there on like 75 millimeter underfoot and they'll be like skiing the line way better than you, even though maybe they're sinking in it, but they don't need these fat skis to ski the deep powder.
When I did my full certification in ski instructing in Austria, to become an Austrian fully certified ski instructor, I just finished ski racing because I had a bad injury and I couldn't race anymore. And then I did that course, and I remember by heart, I just arrived with my ski racing skis, like 183 length, very thin. I don't know, at that time 65, I don't know, very thin. And um and then some of the participants, they were like talking in the morning, which ski should I use? Like a short slalom ski, a GS free ride, little like a thinner one than the free ride one, a thicker one like 95, 100, 110, whatever. They had like a ton, like tons of skis, right, to choose from. And I'm like, shit, I only have one. I'm not, I don't know. By that time, I had no idea about anything like that. And so that made the choice for me very easy what kind of ski I'm using, right? And I'm very thankful for that because I kept skiing. I mean, the Austrian way is very race orientated, but even the short turns and the long turns in the powder, we kind of grew up skiing, yeah, with the TS ski. I never really changed any skis unless I am ski touring, right? I mean, now I'm more on a 95 or 98, 108, but I'm still, last season I skied actually a lot with my race skis. So that's interesting that you kind of, because I also agree that there's always space to improve for everyone. And I'm wondering what is like, do you have like three exercises you would suggest somebody who is preparing for winter?
Ah, I love this question. I've actually never been asked this before, Nina, but um,
Really?
I think out of everything, the quads or the thigh muscles are going to be the number one thing that fatigues. So if your cartilage is able to tolerate it, I think jump squats are going to be the number one thing that are going to fire up the quads. And um, it's great because you don't need any gym equipment. You can do it from wherever you are. You don't need space because you're just jumping up and down. Or maybe if you want to vary it, you can jump from side to side. But like if I'm gonna give that to anyone, I'd just say like just try and do 5 sets and go for as many as you can and get to fatigue. Maybe that's only like 3 jumps for you, maybe that's 30 jumps for you. But everyone is gonna have a tolerance, and then you can write it down, and then the next time you do that, you can just use that as a way to just continue to build up and see like how much stronger you're getting. I love that one for building the quads. That would be more of like plyometric. The other component I like for the quads, and I'm going to be very particular about the quads because that's like the main ski muscle, but I really like isometric holds. And if you think about skiing, you're kind of like, especially when you're in powder, you're not skiing nice and tall. You're kind of in more of an athletic stance. And that's when you're like going up and down and you're trying to adjust to the resistance that the snow is putting through the ski. So I don't like to do wall sits because I think wall sits actually kind of promote putting you in the back seat in skiing. And if you're in the back seat in skiing, it's really hard to steer the skis. So instead, what I'll do is I'll have someone get into just a body weight squat and get into like not the bottom of the movement, but kind of into that like mid position where you would absorb a bump on skiing. And I'll just have them hold like a weight and just stand there as long as they can to build the endurance of their legs until they really feel that thigh burn. Yeah.
It's interesting because it's in, and I feel people are struggling with, especially in the off-piste, that when they're like in almost 90 degree of the knee, you kind of like you play a lot with the lower legs, right? Because you're kind of like absorbing and balancing between those bumps.
Hmm.
And this kind of like up and down, not from the bum and the upper body, it's from the joints and the knees up and down.
Yeah.
That's a big struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
please go ahead.
I was gonna say what I find that happens is people, especially in deep powder, they feel like they need to lean back a little more to bring their tips
Mhm.
up. And then what happens is when you lean back, now you're not using your ankles to absorb impact. You're just using your knee. So if you think now it's just a hinge at the knee and not of the ankle as well because you're leaning so far back. And that's why mechanically, like people's thighs will start to burn as well.
Interesting. We should maybe I'd love to see and discuss with you about more about which type of watts and options we would have for different types. Because I feel for like a downhill racer, like sitting against the wall to really like because like in downhill and you're in a position of like a downhill racer, you need that little bit extra at the bottom, like at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so the one thing about the body weight squats too is I like to vary actually where you do it in the position. So sometimes like obviously you're going to be stronger at the very top of the movement because the amount of muscle that overlaps is going to be stronger versus like the bottom or the midsection of the muscle. So I like to vary it. Sometimes I'll have the person start at the top. Sometimes I'll have them go to the bottom. Sometimes I'll do in the middle. If I work with clients, or when I've done it in the past, I'll play this game with them. I'll call it elevator, and I'll say, okay, this is first floor, second floor, third floor, and I'll just be like, okay, go to the second floor. Okay, now go to the first floor. Now go to the third floor. And they're basically trying to vary at like what level they are. So it's challenging them also in different lengths.
Interesting, cool. Do you actually work a lot with new technologies? Like, let's say you have the wall where you exactly see if a person standing in front of it, sees the degrees, like how they're standing. Do you implement a lot of these type of technologies?
Yeah, Nina, I would say I would like to if I had an in-person clinic, but I
Mm,
would say the number of people that I found that would actually want to come into a facility and look at that specifically for skiing are very, very, very few. You're talking like elite people, like ski racers, or people that really, really care passionately about their skiing. What I found is just the majority of people just want to go out and ski and have fun, and they don't really care about how they perform. So in general, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, in general, they just want to be able to go on the trip and be like, I want to be able to keep up with my kids, or I want to be able to do it without my legs burning, so that way I don't have to quit at lunchtime. And it's like, if you can do that, then I would say for like 80% of skiers, you probably like check the box and it's like, yeah, that was a successful ski day or successful ski season for me. But for that 20%, I totally would. And there's a few pieces I think that like of technology that would be like incredibly helpful. Number one, you're talking like you're looking at a chart and you're looking at, okay, are there side to side differences? On top of that, there's these things called force plates, which when you do different exercises, you can see like what is your foot distribution and how are you distributing the weight? Are you putting more weight on the right versus the left? And that can tell you what's going on potentially at the ankles or the knees or at the hips based on like where you're placing your weight through the foot. But on top of that, you can also do it with like functional tests. So you can do jump tests on there and see like, okay, how are you performing? And if there's a significant difference from like, let's say your right leg and your left leg, where the right is way stronger than the left, well, then you know you need to uptrain the left side. So that way, it's not going to get injured because, as you know, skiing is a two-footed sport and you need to use both of your legs equally. But if one leg is so much stronger, like you have like one hand that's dominant, then the other one that's weaker, well, there's no doubt that like the weaker one is going to be more at risk for injury or not necessarily injury, but even just like decreased performance.
I think it's great what you say, and I also think it's important that like those type of coachings you offer are really like it's great because the people take time to actually do stuff, right? And
Mhm.
really take the time. And if you would say you need like any technology to use, you need to be in person, you need to be face to face.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so when there's some examples like in rehab, there's this machine called the dynamometer or isokinetic testing machine, which will look at the output of your strength. Or if I need like force plates, what I'll do is I'll find a facility near where they are, and then I'll have them go and get all the tests. And then what they do, they have a standard measure of like essentially all the measurements that they did. Then they'll take that sheet, send it to me, and then I can inference like, okay, these are where your differences are, and I can use that data to create a program around that too, which is really cool. So I just use the resources that are available around the person to get the same results essentially.
That's amazing. That's great. Cool. Sounds fun. Greg, that's interesting. That's cool. It motivates me now to ski actually and to yeah, I wanted to do another workout later, so I will think about you probably while doing my workouts.
Yeah,
Um, please.
I was just gonna say there. I think with the advancements of artificial intelligence, and you look at like motion capture. I think this is where ski coaching and just an analysis of skiing is going to go. You're going to be able to put different metrics, or the motion capture is going to just automatically put the metrics, and then it'll analyze you coming down the hill, and the person that's analyzing you, it'll Bluetooth or send whatever connection to the screen, and you'll be able to freeze frame at any point and say like, oh, this is where your right ankle is angulating or edging compared to your left, and it's like oh, you're edging way more on your right than you should on your left, and then you can work on breaking it down into all three planes of movement. I think we can get really, really particular as motion capture gets better and better with technology, and I don't think it's that far down the road. I would say in less than 10 years we'll get there.
And that's actually interesting because that's the struggle, right? You mentioned like body Miller or all of us, we all can learn every day on skis because why? The changing of the weather conditions, the snow, the edges is so much different. Every turn is different, basically. And if you imagine you can practice that via AI or like even on VR when you're sitting at home and you can practice that, you sort of like your brain gets to understand it well and can improve. Interesting. Ah, that would be fun to try it out, right? Imagine just working with AI on skis.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the AI and like you're actually I didn't even think about like the VR aspect of it. Like once you have that and then once you know what's wrong, you put the VR on and then you visualize actually what does it look like when you're doing it incorrectly? And then what does it look like when you're doing it correctly? Because you know the AI will be able to correct whatever it looks like and make it look like it's correct. And then you can train your brain to tell you this is what it should be so that way when you actually put it on snow, you know what it should be. That's so cool from that visualization aspect.
It is. It actually also like helps for probably anticipation, especially when you're thinking for a racer who has gates and um because it's very essential how you kind of enter the gate and the ones who better anticipate are faster and get it better than others. So imagine you're wearing VR sitting at home and really like visualizing and trying and practicing day by day. I think it would be a great thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know if you've heard about this technology from it's called SkyTech Sport. They have you on a ski simulator and it uses electric motors to actually simulate the skiing side to
Wow.
side.
Mm-hmm.
And they have some like ski runs laid out, but what they can do is as the future gets better and they know exactly how the pitch of the different skis go, they know like how fast you're going to accelerate and the information coming at you is real time. So you can click into actually the ski simulator and you can do the run on dry land and it throws you side to side with the exact same forces. Now you're not accelerating forward, but the side to side forces is very much like, okay, if I want to make this gate, this is how much I need to angulate or to put my edges on angle to get around there so I can make sure I hit the next gate. And it's really fascinating.
It is fascinating. Did you try something similar out? Like these kind of movements, there are a lot of options we have or available.
Yeah, so if you look at that technology, it's like the machine, the best machine, the one that they have at the US training facility is $100,000. It's definitely not cheap. You look at other types of training, like if you've heard of the skier's edge machine, which kind of goes side to side, it tries to simulate what that is, but it uses bands to also like make you go side to side, and it's definitely not precise. Where this one is like if you put your edges on a higher edge angle, it's going to increase the amount of resistance and throw you even faster to the other side because that's what happens on the ski hill. Whereas if you put the skier's edge on like a ton of edge angle or you put it on a little, it depends on how much force are you putting into the side, which it determines how fast is it going to rebound the other way. So I don't know. I've tried something similar to the skier's edge. I haven't actually been on the skier's edge myself, but when you're looking at what that's trying to simulate, I think you can get a lot of the benefits of what that is through just dry land training itself, kind of like jumping side to side. So I don't know if there's any additional benefit to the skier's edge, although I do think the technology's pretty fascinating if you do have access to a machine like that.
Yeah, I agree that it for me it looks I've never tried it as well. It looks very static. And like you say, doing the tri-land, when you're jumping, you still have you're kind of dynamic. You have to focus on balance while jumping and you're not fixed.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I would say like if you want to make it really, really dynamic, go to like a hill in your neighborhood, either on pavement or on like grass, and then jump down the hill because that's going to be dynamic, especially on grass where your feet is in different positions, and you're going to have to respond to that too. And you can jump down the hill like you would like if you're doing a mogul run, and then walk back up and do that over and over again.
it's funny that you're saying that because I do that a lot with my clients practicing on snow just without skis. And when
I love
we were
that.
kids, yeah, it's been amazing. When we were kids, we did that. I actually could do another video about that again. We always were hiked up the hills and then jumped down in skiing positions in spent hours and then worked up again doing the same. Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's interesting that it seems like skiing, you just do one turn after the other, but there's so much behind of it. And I think you gave us a great um, overview of your mind and how you wanna practice or coach people getting back on skis. Do you have any like, do those people usually keep working with you after they're back on skis, or I mean, it's good to keep working
Yeah,
on
it
your
really depends. So
brain.
I always give people the option of working with me. Maybe
Mhm.
not necessarily one-on-one, but oftentimes I say like, hey, here is my community of what you can do after I work with you. Because my goal when I finish working with someone is I want to empower them to know exactly like how to get back to the ski hill, but then also what their natural patterns that they fall into that are going to make them a weaker skier. So that way, when they do go to the gym, they can train for that. So if they kind of forget what that is, the community is a great way for them to touch base with me on like a weekly coaching call and just log in and be like, Greg, what was that one thing? Or if they're trying to learn something new, like I'm always putting out new programs to help take what's up here in my mind and translating it to other people so that they can learn basically from what I have. So the community is a great way to just continue and progress with like what I've taught people. But yeah, generally I'll try and not continue to see people because I really want to empower them to say like, hey, you got this on your own. You don't actually need me. You just need to put in the work and you have yourself and your own motivation to help you get there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Greg. I think yeah, it's been a very nice chat. And I would love to maybe set up another podcast in a couple of months because I have so many other questions, but I feel like 45 minutes it's a good start, right?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent start. And honestly, like you, Nina, I'm sure you can probably talk about skiing all day. I love it so much, and there's just so much to get into. But I would just say, like, if you're listening to this podcast, skiing, there's so many technicalities of it. But at the end of the day, go out there and just have fun. Like that's why we do it. And like if it's not fun anymore, and you're just trying to get into the nitty gritty of it, take that break and realize and refocus your mind on like what is the reason why you're doing this, and yeah, go out there and have fun.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what just came up with me is we should do another session where we actually do workout and we film that because we were talking in angulations and like you just said, it's actually going out and have fun. So we could do that. We should do that.
We'll do it. Yeah, we're gonna do a group workout live webinar next time and we'll post it.
Yeah, we should do that. Thank you so much, Greg. It's been fantastic having you on this podcast. I learned a lot. And yeah, let's stay in touch. Thank
So
you.
Nina, yeah, looking forward to keeping in touch with you and talking again. Have a good one.